Welcome back to another episode of the Basketball Lab podcast. I'm your host, Mark Shannon. And once again, I'm joined by my co-host, Marco Corona.
What up?
What's going on?
Not much. I feel like we've been in load management for a couple of weeks, but that's okay.
Right, you got to take some time off here and there, right?
But we took time off to look at the entire scope of the NBA, right? Give us time. It was like scouting. Give the people a chance to enjoy 2 weeks until we can talk about it.
Well, exactly. We wanted to see if some of these, exactly. And we wanted to see if some of these teams came back down to earth. Some of these teams that are playing out of this world basketball that nobody was expecting, right? So we'll get it, right?
And some teams haven't got off the ground. Never mind, So
we won't mention it. We won't mention any team names, but yeah, there's a couple out west that are kind of like,
relegation.
Right. There's one team that's missing a certain player.
Yeah.
That
may or may have not gone to Duke.
Exactly. Yeah. There's one team there, and they made a lot of offseason changes, and it's just been it went the opposite way, right?
Yeah.
They were expected to go.
That's what happens.
Right. They were to go up, but it went like this and said, well, sorry, actually that.
Yeah.
But I want to give a shout out to, Miss Marie Holloway, Kyle Lowry's mom, right? We were just watching the Raptor game, right? And they showed her on the TV, and she's at the Philadelphia 76ers game repping Toronto Raptors gear while her son is playing for the Miami
full
Heat.
Out.
Yeah.
A sweater with the mask.
Yeah, exactly.
Following protocols on Aaron Rodgers. The mask, and it has a Raptors logo on it. She was full out. I've been surprised. You told me about it. I'm like, I was watching the game. I didn't see it.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's that's what do you say? That's a lot of.
That's loyalty, man.
That's exactly. That's the word I was thinking. You took the word right out of my mouth. I just couldn't get it through.
Yeah.
But exactly. The season's been good so far, right? It started off well. There's been a lot of good games to start the season.
Yeah.
There's some rookies that have kind of, taken the league a little bit by storm a little bit. Actually,
I don't know who you're talking about.
I should say maybe not rookies. I should say rookie. Right?
Rookie.
Like some guy north of the border, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think exactly. Well, 4th overall.
Yeah.
Scotty Barnes.
Yeah, Scotty does know, by the way.
Right, exactly. Like, man, sometimes watching that guy out there, it's like watching a gazelle.
You know what? It's OG. It's like they are like, it's the same player, but I feel like Scotty has
more athleticism.
And in fairness, OG was sort of injured coming out of the draft in his first year anyways, and he had some health issues and whatnot, but Scotty Barnes looks like he's been in the league for 4 years.
Yeah,
right? So far.
If Scotty Barnes can keep playing the way he's playing, I think the Raptors have got a steal on their hands. Like, they've gotten a guy that's probably going to be an all-star caliber player down the road, because he could play offense, he can play defense, he could run the floor, right? And that's what you ask for star players, right? Guys that can play both sides of the court, and he can play, like we've said before, all 5 positions, 1 through 5. And he doesn't look scared to take on anybody.
No, he doesn't.
Right?
It's funny. It's like Nick Nurse went into a lab right before the draft and said, "Okay, I'm going to build my prototypical Nick Nurse player," and then he put something in the oven. And what came out was Scotty Barnes, and bam, right there, right. So this is a guy who fits that Nick Nurse system. Lanky, can play defense, can run up and down the court, like you said, right? Like, Nick Nurse has got a lot of options, and he's come out of the gates really, really, really nice, man. Very impressive.
Yeah, and it's funny because there's a team the team that they played tonight kind of had a player similar to him with less athleticism. It's a good defensive player, right?
Who?
I'm going to get there, and you're going to be like, okay, good defensive player can play 1 through 5, but the offensive side of the game, right? It's kind of one-dimensional, right? But his name is Mr. Ben Simmons.
That guy.
Right, that guy, right? So he was kind of the guy that everybody was hoping to be like, that athletic guy who could get to the basket, score hoops, hit shots, play good defense, play 1 to 5. the Philadelphia 76ers haven't gotten that consistently from Ben Simmons over his career with the Sixers, right?
You're being very nice, but go on.
Well, they've gotten a lot less than, they've gotten definitely a lot less than what they were expecting from Ben Simmons, especially the last few years, right? Like maybe he made the All-Star team last year. Congratulations, that's great. But I mean, you still did nothing the rest of the year. And in the playoffs, you were an absolute dud. And now just drama after drama after drama with the Sixers and Ben Simmons, right? Obviously, today we had the news, or the news kind of broke late today about the Rich Paul calling out the Sixers and saying that the fining's not helping him because of his mental health and it's making it worse and blah, blah, blah. Call him out if he's lying. Basically he said it's either you give him the help or call him out if he's lying, or either shut up or call him out and say he's lying. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't know. I want to get your take on this whole situation in general before we get into other topics about it.
Yeah, the entire thing is complete mess. We've seen a couple of teams in two different sports this week that have completely mishandled their star players. And I'm not going to get too much into the other one, but just a little crossover. And basically, now we have, in the case of Philadelphia, you have one party pointing the finger at the other. The comparison I was trying to make was Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers, right? Versus the NFL, et cetera, right? It was all mishandled. And, the Aaron Rodgers thing is a little bit different because he's controlling the narrative and the Packers let him do what basically they want, but they could have stopped this. And I guess that's where my comparison starts, is where the Philadelphia 76ers had the opportunity to stop this basically last year and do something about turning their franchise around. And let's face it, this franchise is not like they are a lottery team, right? They were a lottery team to get to where they are today, which is the irony. But now the star player that was part of the process is part of the problem, right? That's what they should call Philadelphia, not the part. Trust the problem, right? Because that's basically what this is. And part of the problem is, and I know you want to get into it as well, is, and I want to be very delicate because it's a serious topic, and we're here to talk about basketball and have fun and rip on teams and players and whatnot and give credit where credit is due. But when you talk about mental health, either somebody's going through it or somebody that personally or across the way or whatever the case is, you have to be very careful on how you handle that. Whether it's the person saying that they have mental health issues or the employer, trying to help, or whatever the case Philadelphia is doing, provide some help for this particular individual, which in this case is Ben Simmons. And I am very conflicted in this because I wanted to talk about it, but I didn't want to get too much into, I don't know, I guess too in depth without being being disrespectful or trying to.
Absolutely.
Right? Because there's people that are either listening to this podcast or people that we know that have gone through shit, right? If I can say that right now. And now you have this player who is, potentially going through something that a lot of people are going through, and their employer is saying, well, we're going to get you help. And then the person who's going through it doesn't want the help. And then his agent says basically a lot of trash and this. And then we'll get to the basketball side of it for 1 second, but it's a very delicate and unfortunate situation because both parties don't seem to be helping each other at all, right? That's the bottom line, right? Ben Simmons asked for help. Philadelphia apparently offered it. Ben Simmons declined it. Philadelphia fined him, and then his agent's now involved, and it's just spiraled into a potentially very delicate and ugly situation. And it has nothing to do with basketball at this particular juncture. It has to do with basically what the player wants and how he feels about the situation, whether it's the pressure of playing basketball in Philadelphia or any city. You have to be careful on a lot of things that, how you say it and what we also talk about as well, right? So I don't know, what are your thoughts on that? And then we can get into the basketball side of it, because the basketball side we'll get into that, but I don't know what your thoughts are.
Well, obviously, same thing with you, at the end of the day, like nobody's sitting here going to say anything bad about, if you need help, if you need help, you need to get help, right? Everybody needs that, nobody.
And by the way, sorry to interrupt you, and asking for help it takes a lot.
Exactly.
It does,
Absolutely.
right? And we saw an example of that in the NHL with Carey Price, where he asked for help and he's getting the help that he needs, right? So I mean, the degree of severity of the situation varies depending on the person. But anyways, go on.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, if you need to talk to somebody, you should talk to somebody. There's
Absolutely.
helplines out there. There's people that are out there that are out there to talk to. But the thing is about this whole situation to me, and what gets me is that it's kind of being played out in the media more than it's being played out behind closed doors. You know what I mean? And when it's something like this, when you're talking about mental health, it should be behind closed doors a little bit more, with especially within the organization and stuff. But like, and the Sixers should be doing all they can to try and help them. Which, you know, they say they are. Obviously, like you said before we even got on this podcast, there's three sides to every story, right? The one side, the other side, and then somewhere in between is the truth, right? So we don't know who's actually telling the truth, who's not telling the truth, what's going on, any of that. We're not going to call anybody out and say Ben Simmons is lying and he's not dealing with any mental health.
We don't know.
Right,
We don't know
exactly.
that.
Nobody knows. Only Ben Simmons and his people know, right? And I don't think anybody's going to sit here and say that. But it's just, to me, it's just, I don't know. It's being played out in the media way too much. It's like kind of like, you know, the right wing, left wing with the masks and not wearing masks before in the US, right? It's the same thing. It's being played out in the media. One side saying this, one side saying that. But Ben Simmons, his ultimate goal, and Rich Paul can say whatever he wants. Their ultimate goal is to get out of Philly. Plain and simple.
Yes.
They've made it known. They know what it's going to take. The longer this drags out, the worse it's going to get for the Sixers in terms of what they're going to get back, right? Because who's going to want to take on a guy that's got this much baggage, right? Obviously, and I'm not talking about baggage in terms of his mental health. I'm talking about baggage in terms of the drama, right? Just the drama that he's bringing right now, right? Obviously, you have Rich Paul, your agent. He's obviously one of the biggest names in agencies for basketball, right? So he's obviously going to try and control the narrative as best as he can for his player, because he knows that once eventually he gets moved, that team is going to want Ben Simmons in the fold, right? So he's going to try and control the narrative the best he can to make it look like Ben Simmons isn't the bad guy, right? That's business,
That's
especially
business. Correct.
business in sports. It's always like that.
Yeah.
The agents are always going to try, unless it's an amicable split, right? The agents are always going to try and make the organization look like the bad guy. They're not going to make the player look like the bad guy, because that hurts them, that hurts the bottom line, and that hurts the player, right? So I think it's just, I don't know, it's just too much to me. Like, I think it's just too much, and it's just like, it's got to end. Either one side's got to end it, whether it's Ben Simmons taking the help from the Sixers, or the Sixers just letting him do his own thing and just saying, you know what, whatever, we'll trade you as soon as we can, but we're done. Like, you know what I mean? That's just where I'm at. But I mean, at the end of the day, he's their player. They pay him money. They want him to be in the fold with the Sixers unless they can trade him. So I can see why they want to find him and why they want to do all that stuff, right?
Right. But, you know, so now getting into the basketball side of it, this is what I don't understand. Okay. So, and I wrote this down because I didn't want to forget. So the season started, and then Ben said, "I'm not coming."
Yeah.
Right. Then Philly says, "Fine, then you're not getting paid."
Yeah.
Then Ben showed up to training camp, had a practice,
in track
pants
and
and his cell phone in his pocket.
Yeah.
I don't right. He slammed the basketball after, ironically enough, his coach asked him to do a defensive drill, which is actually, I find that really ironic.
Yeah.
Because that's his thing. Ben said, "No, thank you. I'm taking my ball, slamming it, and going home."
Yeah.
Right. Then he comes back and says, "I have mental problems." Then the Sixers says, "Fine, we will help you and we will pay you, but go see our team doctors." Ben says, "No." Right. And then Rich Paul all of a sudden comes out and says he's being treated like trash.
Yeah.
So this is like, basically, I just scripted this whole thing and narrowed it down to about 30 seconds or less. So where is the truth? Because again, going back to Philadelphia, they should have traded him last year. They overvalue what he is worth, right?
And they're still doing it.
Right? At the end of the day, they're not going to get what they want based on what they thought that he is, right? Ben Simmons is not, it's not his first year out of college and he killed it last year and now he wants out. This is not the case. We've seen the player, to your point, regress every year. Forget the All-Star stuff. Forget the All-Star. The All-Star things is just a banner for having a good regular season. Where you get paid and where you make your money is the playoffs.
Yeah.
Right? Your performance in the playoffs. That's it. Otherwise, regular season is just what did Kawhi say? It's a dress rehearsal for the bigger things, right? So Ben Simmons has actually regressed where he's supposed to get paid for. And now he basically wants out. I would respect the guy more for just saying, I want out, which he has, and I'm not going to show up, and you guys figure it out. I'm going to go home. I'm going to practice. I'm going to do my drills, miss a bunch of shots, do the TO thing and work out outside of my home. Remember that, by the way, that nonsense when TO worked out when he was in Philadelphia, by the way. He was an Eagle at the time, right? And anyways, and that's fine because that happens in every single sport where a player doesn't want to be somewhere. He holds out, he does his thing until they figure it out and they trade him. Yeah. But now this has all become convoluted with mental health, which again, we talked about it. It's important to talk about it, but I just feel like, and I'm going to be very careful, I'm going to say it anyways, somebody is using this as a crutch. And that's wrong. Because if I'm right about this, it's completely wrong and inappropriate to do so. But this is what they're doing, right? This is the ugly side of sports. Because if Ben Simmons is in fact suffering from something deeper than basketball, anxiety or whatever the case is, then yes, he does need help. And Philadelphia should be able to either provide him the help or let him just do his thing, right? Let him figure it out, right? Like just whatever. But now they're trying to basically have their cake and eat it too, and it doesn't really work that way, in my opinion.
Well, exactly. And like I said, it's two sides trying to control the narrative on either side, right? To make themselves look better. And I mean, it's not hurting anybody but Ben Simmons at the end of the day, whether it's Rich Paul or Philadelphia organization, right? It's not helping either side. It's helping either side, but it's not helping Ben Simmons. The ultimate goal for Ben Simmons is to get himself healthy and to get himself back on the court, whether it's with the Sixers or with whoever he gets traded to. Obviously, like I said, I think that their goal, and we obviously know their goal because they asked for a trade, is for Ben Simmons to be moved, right? So I think it's a lot. Some of it is a ploy, obviously not the mental health side of it, but all this other talk behind all of it is as a ploy for him to get traded, right? But again, like I said, it's like
there's other ways to do it, though, man.
Absolutely, but it's all exactly. But it's also, you look at it like this, and it's like, how? Okay, you want to trade him? That's fine. He wants a trade. That's fine. But now you're adding this whole other layer on top of this Ben Simmons stuff, right? Philadelphia was asking for whatever they were asking, which we obviously know. And our other co-host Mark said the same thing back a couple weeks ago. Did Philly really want to trade him with the way they were offering, with some of the offers they were given, right? Like they were asking for a king's ransom. You know what I mean? Like Ben Simmons is great. He's got good defensive ability. He's got got a lot of talent, but he's not worth a king's ransom. Sorry, he's not. Right. And then you add this stuff to it, and it's like, okay, well, we can bring him in. Hopefully this thing doesn't happen again. And then we're going through this whole scenario with another organization. You know what I mean? I think the only place for Ben Simmons to go that he would be, like maybe would have to be a team that's not in the limelight, in my opinion, right? You can't go to the Lakers, right? You can't go to Lakers. Even you can't go to the Clippers. The Clippers, they're obviously second rate in LA, but you can't go there because the media presence. The Knicks are going to have media presence. There's talk about Boston, right? Well, we'll get into that in a little bit here, but there's talk about Boston. You can't go there. Like so where does he end up going, right? Like there's not many places that he can go where he's not going to get media scrutiny or fan scrutiny or any of this stuff. You know what I mean? So I just don't know what's in store for Ben Simmons. Obviously, I think from both of us on both sides of it, where we're looking at it, obviously the first thing for us is that we hope he gets better, whatever it is, right?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Obviously, you never want anybody to go through mental health, whether it's anxiety, depression, all that stuff. You want them to get the help they need, right? So obviously, first and foremost, that's what we hope. But at the end of the day, something's got to give. Either side's got to give. One person's going to give, and it's either going to be Ben Simmons. He's going to go back to the Sixers or just take their help, or he's going to be traded. Plain and simple. That's the end result for either side.
Right. It's got to be at the end of the day. It's got to come down to a business decision, right? And it's got to be what's best for the franchise, what's best for Ben Simmons, and just go from there. At the end of the day, the Philadelphia 76ers are never going to get what they think Ben Simmons is worth.
No.
And that's the problem. They're holding off for something that's bigger They had a chance to do it, and I've said it repeatedly on this podcast that they had a potential deal with Houston and they balked on it, right? And that's probably the best offer that they were going to get. Just think about that. The best offer that we're going to get was James Harden, and basically they said, nah, not right now.
Yeah,
right? We'll just wait. Well, now you have nothing, right? You're gonna have to trade him for 10 cents on the dollar.
exactly. And I mean, obviously, and I brought it up there earlier, there's talk about the Celtics being possibly involved in a deal or being one of the suitors now for Ben Simmons, right? And there's been
Right.
talk that the Philadelphia 76ers want Jaylen Brown back in return. I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, Philly thinks he's worth a ton, but I mean, for me, a straight swap for Jaylen Brown, maybe throw in a second round pick, a future second round pick, or a future first round pick with Jaylen Brown for Ben Simmons. To be honest with you, I think that's a good deal for Philadelphia.
For Philadelphia, yes.
I think even for Boston too. I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, Boston. I think Boston has a lot of the same players, right?
They already have a guy who can make shots, and sorry, excuse me. They already have a guy who can play defense, which is Smart. They already have him, right? It's to me, it doesn't make sense. Like it didn't make sense for him to go to Golden State to play with Draymond Green. Well, why do you need two guys that can't don't make shots? Yeah. Draymond at least does other things and et cetera, and you know that he's not going to give you that because that's not who he is. Ben Simmons just refuses to do that. But it's different. But going back to the Boston thing, like to me, if I'm Philadelphia, yes, I want that trade 100%. No doubt about it, because you accomplish two things. You replace Ben Simmons, and you're also getting rid of the issue that's you couldn't get rid of.
But you're not, right? And you're not replacing Ben Simmons with just some, like a bunch of pieces, right? Like,
no, he's not trash. He's a very good player.
But that's what I mean. You're not putting in a bunch of pieces like kind of what Houston got for James Harden, right? You're getting a bunch of pieces that you're getting a piece that's a really solid piece that you could add to a core that already has Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, who had an outstanding game today. That
guy's a player, man.
Right? Exactly.
That guy can ball.
Exactly. Andre Drummond.
If anything, my guy, if you're looking for the replacement for Ben Simmons, they already found him.
Oh, it's absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
That to me, and that's why you have to move him now. You have to move him now because you already have your guy, and you have him on the cheap. So move him out, get what you can, and get a bunch of supplemental pieces, some dead contracts or whatever the case is. Ask for draft picks. Don't ask for King's ransom because you're not going to get it, and just take it and run and let Boston figure it out. That's not your problem. You already have your guy. I agree. Have your guy Maxey. I'm telling you right now, this guy is a baller.
Well, exactly. And you look at it in this sense. If Boston trades for Ben Simmons and they get rid of Jaylen Brown, the Sixers are better off, in my opinion, in terms of roster stability. Right, you've got a guy who can shoot the three in Jaylen Brown. Right, he's got all-star potential. Right, you've got, like you said, you've got Tyrese Maxey who can play defense. Andre Drummond. He's the rim protector. They've got Danny Green, who's kind of lost the step a little bit there. There's still some
talent. He was still there,
right? Exactly. There's still talent on that roster in terms of defense.
Right.
But offensively, they've kind of hit a wall. They have their guys. They have Ben Simmons. They have Joel Embiid. They have Seth Curry when he has a good night. They don't have a secondary scorer that's consistent in Philadelphia, right? You don't have that secondary score that's consistent. It's either Joel Embiid's putting up 30 points a night, Tobias Harris has to put up 30 points a night, and then the next guy,
which he can, but he's inconsistent.
But that's what I mean. You look at Tobias Harris, you look at Danny Green, you look at Andre Drummond, you look at Seth Curry, you look at Tyrese Maxey, Matisse Thybulle, right? All these guys are inconsistent scorers. They have one good game, like Tyrese Maxey had 33 points tonight. The next game he could have 15. Right, it's not.
I still like his upside, though.
I'm just saying, like in terms of the difference, right? You add a Jaylen Brown, Joel Embiid's there. Jaylen Brown's a guy that can put up 20 to 30 points a game, right? Like in that range every single night.
And then you take the pressure off of Maxey, right? So then Maxey becomes a better player, and he doesn't have to be the guy when Joel Embiid is off the lineup, because you know that. He's going to have his sick days. He's like the Julio Jones of the NBA, for crying out loud.
Jeez, tell me about it.
No, that's another podcast. But yeah, no, I completely agree. And Jaylen Brown is a kind of a Philly kind of player, isn't he?
Absolutely.
A little bit grimy, a little bit like can get under your skin.
Absolutely.
And if you're going to, because I feel like the Philadelphia 76ers play into the crowd more than any other team in the NBA.
Absolutely.
They're obnoxious people, and I'm a Flyers fan, but that's another story. But you know, Jaylen Brown is sort of that prototypical Philadelphia player.
Yeah.
Who can do a little
Agreed.
bit of everything. It's not necessarily outstanding on defense. I think he's average at best.
Yeah.
But that's what they need in that team, man. A little bit of sandpaper. I'm telling you right now. If I'm Philly, I pull the trigger. But Boston, buyer
I'm a little
beware.
hesitant, for sure. Brad Stevens a little,
beware.
Yeah, they're a little bit hesitant on that, for sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the season's, like I said, the season's already in full swing, but I guess we gotta, we haven't really talked about the season because we've been off since before the season started, right? We had our little preview show, and then, but I want to get some surprises for you so far. I want you to give me one team out of the East and one team out of the West.
I'm going to. I had two teams out of the East, but you asked me for one, so I'm going to be nice and ask and give you the one. And I'm going to actually say, believe it or not, I'm going to throw a curveball at you. I'm surprised the Chicago Bulls are this good this early. I'm still not completely sold on them, but they've been playing really well.
Yeah.
My other team was probably the one you're going to steal. I want your thoughts on that after. It's the Washington Wizards as well. I just think that the Chicago Bulls have a little bit more, I guess, upside and maybe more sustainable the way they're built.
Yeah.
I did say in our, during the previous podcast and even before that and before the offseason was that I'm not sure if down the stretch their defense can hold up. And that's my number one concern with, the Chicago Bulls, sorry. And that's my number one concern with the Chicago Bulls. But I am really surprised on how good they've looked early. They're really gelling quick. And that's the thing too, when you have a roster turnover, right? There's sometimes a little bit of a time to gel, right? And now you're looking at the Chicago Bulls, they're off and running, right? It's first of all, it's good to see. I called the Chicago Bulls a few months ago. They're like the mid-major team that you really want to cheer for. They're not really a major market, even though they had the Jordan years back in the day. So that's what made him sort of an elite market, but they're sort of the mid-major, and now they're sort of trying to get back to what they were, even when the Derrick Rose years was there and, Jimmy Butler and et cetera. But other than that, they've been a lot of trash in between, right? So it's nice to see that. So I'm surprised in that. I'm surprised if, can I talk about my disappointment now? I think I can, right?
Yeah.
I'm surprised on the opposite side of that, how bad the Pelicans have been. I usually save this part for the Sacramento Kings. And I'm not even talking about the Sacramento Kings. They're actually okay. They're decent, right?
Yeah, they haven't been too bad this season so far.
They haven't been trash. They're going to screw it up eventually, but I'm surprised how terrible, not bad, how terrible the Pelicans have been. They've made a lot of changes, coaching change, this, that, and the other. And everything that they've touched has turned into dog shit. Mind you, I'm just being honest.
It's true.
Mind you, it's true, right? It's damn true.
It's not even like hot shit. It's hot garbage. That's what it's been like. Literally, like it's like literally like hot garbage.
Flaming in your front door with a paper bag.
Literally,
and you open it and you're like, put it out, and then it's just splashed everywhere. That's how bad the Pelicans have been.
Who's the coach there?
Right,
they got rid of what's his name, right? Van Gundy.
Van Gundy. Which remember, I said it was a mistake.
Right, and they brought in another coach, right? I think, but that's what I was trying to get at. It's kind of
that's probably a problem.
But I'm kind of saying it's kind of a I was kind of trying to get at the point that you said that it was a mistake to let go of Van Gundy because he's good with the young guys, right?
Well, apparently him and Zion had a little bit of friction. I don't know if that's
who's
true
not having friction with Zion. I think Zion's having friction with himself.
That sounds weird. I'm not gonna lie. Well,
hey, maybe you never.
Listen, whatever you do in your off.
That's a different
man,
podcast.
That just rehab whatever the hell you're doing, man. Don't friction yourself. But anyways, they're bad. They're actually bad. And the reason I am disappointed in the Pelicans is that, you remember the bubble?
Yeah.
Right? Do you remember when they instituted the play-in?
Yeah.
And remember how much we talked about that this was built for the Pelicans to get in, and the NBA was doing everything possible. Now, we were probably wrong, but I think that there's some underlying truth to that, to try to get the Pelicans in on TV, on primetime, push Zion, right? They pushed the other guys in there, and they failed miserably. And ever since then, it has gone actually backwards. It just got worse. They hired Van Gundy, which I thought was a good move, and then they pulled the chute early. Like, why?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand. I think that this team is really confused on what they're doing, and that's my biggest disappointment so far. 1-11 start. I don't know what they can do to turn it around in a tough Western Conference, but those are my two. Chicago on the one side for the good, New Orleans for the other.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I'll take the Wizards on this one for my surprises. I mean, I don't think anybody really would have thought that the Wizards would be first in the Eastern Conference, 8-3 on the season, 5-1 at home. They're 7-3 in their last 10. Montrezl Harrell's playing out of this world, coming off the bench, starting, doing yeoman's work. He's back to his LA Clippers 6th man of the year self, right? Like he's averaging 18.3 points per game, almost 10 rebounds a game, shooting 64% from the field, over a block per game. So he's all over the stat sheet.
Yeah.
Right. 5 double-doubles on the year. So he's all over the stat sheet. Bradley Beal looks to be getting a little bit of help out there. Obviously, maybe it's a Scott Brooks effect not being there anymore, and maybe that's changing the atmosphere around Washington, because they truly didn't really go out and make a ton of deals. Kyle Kuzma's looked all right. Kyle Kuzma, they made that big deal obviously for Russ, trading him away and bringing in Montrez, bringing in Kuzma. Both those guys have kind of stepped up for the Wizards.
KCP,
right? Yeah, they've kind of stepped up for the for the Wizards this year, right? So it's been a good deal for them. I think they're 5-1 at home, 7-3 in their last 10. I like what they're doing right now, right?
They're like the ghetto Lakers.
Well, exactly. I mean, obviously, I don't think we're buying the stocks right now, because if you're buying stocks right now with the Wizards, I think you might be losing some money at the end of the year.
You think so? They'll come back to earth. I mean,
I think they're going to come back to earth. I don't think you're going to see the Boston Celtics out of the playoffs. Like I believe Miami's struggling a little bit there. Like they're kind of,
they'll be fine.
Miami's kind of here and there. Cleveland's up in the playoff position. I know Ricky Rubio had an outstanding game, but it's Cleveland. Like, come on, it's Cleveland.
And it's Ricky Rubio, so that means that in 2 weeks he'll get hurt.
Atlanta's 4-8, Indiana's 4-8. The Raptors are 7-6 now after tonight. The Knicks are 7-5, right? So I think there's still going to be teams that are going to come up and starting clipping them off.
That's a question. I know we didn't plan to talk about this. There's a lot of hype around the New York Knicks.
I think that's got to do with last year.
Are there okay, now it's 12 games into the season, 12, 15 games, so it's way too early to say who's overrated, who's underrated. But are the Knicks a little bit overrated for what the hype is? Or is it because they are the New York Knicks? I mean, they're 7-5. I mean, they're not blowing team out of I feel like in their 7 wins they've looked really good, and their 5 losses they look like average at best.
Well, that's the thing, and 4 of the losses have come at home, right?
The Raptors went in there and slapped them.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
Right. Mind you, the Raptors were like the Road Warriors, right? Like I'm on a hawk right now. Like shout out to WWE, but holy smokes, I get it. The Knicks are good, but I don't know if they're there yet.
But that's the thing with me, because the Knicks are basically this exact same as the Toronto Raptors. They're not good at home, right? They're, like I said, they're 2-4 at home, 5-1 on the road. The Raptors are 2-5 at home, 2-5 at home, 5-1 on the road, right? So they're kind of the same thing where they're playing well on the road. At home thing, they're not as consistent, as good at home, right? And for the Raptors, that could be a lot of getting used to getting back into Toronto, getting back playing at Scotiabank Arena, getting back into a routine, right?
Listen, the Raptors have been playing on the road for 2 years, right? So to them, that's all they know.
Exactly.
And getting back to playing at home, trying to impress the fans of a young team and this and that, that's tough.
Exactly.
It's actually an underrated point, because I feel like the Raptors' home advantage early is actually a disadvantage because they played so long on the road that being at home is I feel like they have to play so well because the fans have missed them and this and that, and everybody sort of even the energy at the Scotiabank Arena is not exactly quite there yet because everybody's like waiting for, get this team on the road. And then you get them on the road, they look like a complete opposite team. Doesn't mean that they're playing like ass at home. They're not. They lost a couple of heartbreakers here and there, but you can tell.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I cut you
no,
off.
I agree. No, I agree with you 100%. And that's why I said, like, I think I think the Wizards will get clipped a little bit. I think there's going to be teams that are going to climb up. Brooklyn's going to get back up there. Philly.
Yeah.
I think the Heat are going to start going on a roll a little bit there. There's teams that are going to knock them off their perch right now. I think that it's just an early season thing for the Wizards. We saw that last year, right? The Cleveland Cavaliers were 4-0 last year, and look where they ended up, right?
How that turned out. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think a lot of things are going to change. It's still way too early in the season for any of that, but I'll echo your disappointment. One of your disappointments, the Pelicans, obviously being 1-11, 0-5 at home. They're 26th in offensive rating.
Awful.
They're, right, third, dead, almost basically dead last in defensive rating. Right, 30th in defensive rating, which means they're not doing it on either end of the floor. They're horrible on both sides. So I mean, they're doing good with rebounds, but I mean, if you can't put the ball in the basket, what good are rebounds?
Right. Exactly.
Exactly. What a good are rebounds. And then the other team I was gonna say, I mean, I don't know if they're really a disappointment because they've kind of been the same thing the last few years, but the Trailblazers, right? The Portland Trailblazers, right? They're 4-6. They haven't won a game on the road this season. Lillard's only averaging 20 points per game this season, 38% from field goal.
And he's grumpy.
Exactly 25% from the 3-point line. And at the end of the day, like, it's not like he's not getting secondary scoring. It's kind of like the Sixers, where it's kind of inconsistent scoring from the secondary players, like the secondary scoring. Right. Norman Powell's putting up points. Nurkic is playing pretty well.
Good for him, by the way. Right. It's nice to see him play well.
Yeah. CJ's putting up points. Anthony Simmons is doing pretty well over there, right? So they're getting secondary scoring. It's just not it's not translating to wins.
Do you think it has a lot to do with changing the system with the way Chauncey Billups wants them to play? Or is it just a matter of just a slow start? It's Dame time has basically his clock is slow right now, right? Like it's not ticking. But I don't know what it is. Like it's just like
father clock right now.
Yeah, the other day he was complaining about the refereeing, the officiating. I mean, we all do it. I was complaining about the officiating tonight against the Raptors, but it just seems that he just looks frustrated.
Yeah. Because
Dame time is not like, he really looks like a different player. Norm Powell's going to do his thing, right? He'll drop 31 game, 15 the other, 25 one game, 18 the other. That's what he is, right? And then everybody else is sort of doing their thing. But I liked what you said. The Portland Trailblazers, I feel like they're a disappointment, but at the same time,
it's what we've come to expect.
It's what they are.
Yeah.
Right? They're not going to, I don't know, there's just something about the Portland Trailblazers that just bothers me, that they should be better every year, and every year we're disappointed. I just don't understand why they refuse to make a ballsy move and make some changes in that franchise. They clearly love Dame Lillard. It's clear, it's obvious. And it's clear that Dame Lillard, until further notice, because that can change at any time, loves playing for the Portland Trailblazers. But what they have built over the last 6, 7, 8 years hasn't done much.
Yeah.
I don't get it. So I don't know.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of those Toronto, right? It kind of reminds me of those Toronto Raptors team where they built the team up and they made the playoffs year after year after year, and they were competing and competitive, and they just couldn't get it done. And it's the same similar situation now. The only difference was Masai was willing to make that ballsy move, and Portland is just not willing to make that move, because at the end of the day,
that's the difference.
Well, but at the end of the day, what does Portland really have to move? Yeah, they have CJ McCollum, but are they really going to be able to get a Kawhi Leonard type player into Portland for CJ McCollum? I don't know.
But it hasn't worked with CJ McCollum, so why is he still there? So one way or another, you got to make a decision.
No, but I'm not saying because of that. I'm saying, like, who are they going to? Yeah, they could trade, but who's going to trade them a star player for CJ McCollum, Joseph Nurkic, Norman Powell. You know what I mean? Like they're going to have to give up a chunk of their roster to get a player like that caliber, right?
Well, that's why they pay the GMs the big bucks to make those decisions.
No, absolutely. I 100% agree. Like, I mean, I don't know. It's just that's the team that I've been a little bit disappointed with. I mean, like I said, it's kind of to steal a quote from the NFL there, the Arizona Cardinals coach there, the Blazers are who we thought they were. Right.
And we let him off the field.
Right. Exactly. We let him off the hook. Right. That's everybody lets the Blazers off the hook because, they've got Damian Lillard. But Damian Lillard isn't there this year. Like he's not playing the same to start the season. He's not playing the same way he was. And I mean that a lot of that could be right. He was injured at the end of last year. If I remember correctly, right?
Correct. Yes, he was a little banged up.
Yeah, a little banged up, right? So a lot of that could be a little bit, wear and tear, right? Early season, coming back, right? Because they made the play-in game, did they not?
Yes, they did.
Right?
Yes.
Didn't they make the playoffs?
No, they were the playing team, if I'm not mistaken. Or are we thinking about 2 years ago?
Maybe. Now I'm lost now.
Where we're thinking about the bubble, I believe. We got to do a fact check. Somebody hit us up.
Exactly. Somebody let us know. But I thought they were a playoff team last year. I thought they squeaked in as the 8th seed last year. And we're in the play-in and then lost the play-in game. But I could be wrong.
But here's the problem with what we can't remember is that we can't remember.
True,
and that's the point, right? If you can't remember what a supposedly good team does, and yes, we may have forgotten and I'm making excuses, blah, 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 but that means they're not doing anything relevant, right? We remember that the Golden State Warriors played the Lakers, right? We remember the battles that the Denver Nuggets had and et cetera, et cetera. If you can't remember what the Portland Trailblazers did, and they have an elite, he's not a good player, he's an elite superstar, then that tells you that really they're not making anything happen. And I think it's time for them to make a decision. To me, if you value Dame Lillard that much, you have to get him the proper help. And I just say this with all due respect to Norm Powell. He's not going to move the needle, man. He's a depth guy as far as guy who can get you a quick bucket either off the bench or your starting lineup if you need something. But at the end of the day, look at the West, the way it's built. Everybody has a big 2 or a big 3 or a big 4 for crying out loud. And CJ McCollum is a nice player, but if you're going up against a healthy motor is running, everybody is going Lakers team. I'm taking the Lakers every single day of the week against the Portland Trailblazers. That's my example. That's my point, right?
So we're gonna go back to fact checking here. So the Portland Trailblazers actually were the 6th seeded team last year in the playoffs, right? They were 42-30, so they didn't even they were guaranteed a playoff spot. They weren't even in the play-in game, right? Wow. But then now that I remember it, now they ended up playing. I'm trying to figure out who they ended up playing in the playoffs. Now the way that I look at it, they were playing. Was it the Lakers? No, it was Denver. That's right. They ended up playing Denver. And Denver ended up winning. That's it.
That's right. And Denver didn't have Jamal Murray.
No, they didn't. Nikola Jokic. Yeah. No.
That I remember. See? Yeah. And that's my point.
So we'll move on to our final topic before we let a little bit of overtime here. We'll talk about LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers. LeBron James is out with an injury. Yeah. But the Los Angeles Lakers seem to be playing a little bit better without him.
See, why are you doing that? You're doing what everybody else does, which is, oh, this guy's out and they're playing better without him. Stop. Why would you do that?
Hey, I'm not going to sit here and say anything because, I have LeBron James on my fantasy team. So, I'm not going to sit here and bash him because I have him on my fantasy team. You know what I mean?
Right.
I need him to put up the points. But, no, it's just they were kind of – maybe that's not a LeBron James thing. Maybe it's a gelling thing in terms of the fact that they picked up Russell Westbrook in the offseason. They brought in Carmelo Anthony. They brought back Rajon Rondo. They made a bunch of moves in the offseason, right? What's the guy they traded for? I can't even remember his name now. No, it's it slipped my mind.
You're not thinking of Malik Monk, are you?
Yeah, that's it. Malik Monk. They picked up him, and they were.
By the way, that's the best move that they actually did.
But that's
as
what I mean.
far as
They
their
were,
depth moves, that was a very
but that's
good.
what I mean. They were expecting a lot of people in the offseason, pundit alike, were expecting bigger things from Malik Monk, and he hasn't really. But again, a lot of that has to go with consistency and chemistry and building that
He's
chemistry.
played well though. He's
No,
played
I
well.
know.
Well,
Yeah,
he's had really good games, and I think that's a very good pickup. And I think that will
exactly.
play dividends in the playoffs. But I think where you were going with that, with the whole LeBron James thing and the gelling thing is, and I don't think they're better off without LeBron.
No,
I don't think
absolutely
that's
not.
what he meant. But I think what that gives them the opportunity is what they look like with LeBron James off the floor.
Yeah.
Because you can't run LeBron James out there for 48, 45, if you go overtime, 50 minutes, whatever the case is, right? LeBron James is no spring chicken anymore.
No.
Right? You have to preserve the minutes. You have to play him smart. God forbid I say load management, right?
Yeah,
Manage his
absolutely.
minutes. Sorry, we're not allowed to say that anymore. We'll probably get cut off by LeBron. But I think what that gives him the opportunity is for Russ to settle in with AD, develop some chemistry. Listen, AD and LeBron don't need chemistry. They're fine, right? It's everybody else that needs the chemistry. LeBron, you can just drop him in anywhere and they'll work out, right? Ask the Cleveland Cavaliers how that worked out for them for 8 years. It's simple as that. He's on your team, you'll be fine. You take him off, everybody else has to play better. So when LeBron James comes back, it's only going to be a benefit to the LA Lakers and hopefully make me look good because I picked him to go get out of the West and go to the NBA Finals, just like you have selfishly picked LeBron James in your fantasy pool. I selfishly have to promote the fact that I picked the Lakers to the finals. In saying that, I think the Lakers are going to be fine if they can stay healthy. I think when LeBron comes back, there'll be a little bit of an adjustment period, just like anything else, right? But I think that this period where you're seeing, Russ and AD and Monk and Melo do his thing and et cetera, I think this is a good thing. And I heard the other day that, AD pulled Russ aside and said, basically, stop turning the ball over, goddammit, right? And this is what they need, though, because at the end of the day, bottom line is whether you have LeBron or not, AD has to be your best player.
Yeah.
At this stage of the game, AD has to be your best player, and they have to develop that chemistry because nothing's guaranteed with LeBron.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you're guaranteed to be successful, but what I'm saying is you have to develop that, and I think that it's a good thing that they're starting to gel slowly. With the Lakers, it's not about the record in the regular season; it's about how they get to the playoffs and how healthy they are. And I think this is a blessing in disguise for them. This is my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the Lakers will be fine when it comes down to the end of the season. I think they're going to be in a better position than they were last year. And they dealt with injuries last season, but I think they're got more depth to them this year, especially on that, right? Especially way more depth this year. They've got other talented players on that roster to pick up the slack when LeBron's out, when AD's out, when Russ is out, right? Yeah. You're not relying on those two players.
Because AD's going to get hurt. We all know that, right?
Well, exactly, right? You're not relying on those two players to put up 40 points, 40 minutes a night, put up 30 and 10 or 30, 10 and 10, right? If you're in LeBron's shoes for the most part. So I think the added addition of Russell Westbrook is huge for the Lakers. I think it's going to change coming like later on in the season. I think you're going to see a bigger, the slope's going to go up for the Lakers, right? We're just going to keep seeing them win more and more. But that's just my opinion on it. I don't know.
Yeah, no, and let's not forget when the LeBron and the big three in Miami got together. By the All-Star game, they were a 500 team. Yeah, they were very mediocre, right? So things sometimes take a little time to
take time.
But there's way too much talent on this team not for them not to be a top 4 team. So if I'm a Lakers fan, I'm, there's some nights that I know one of my Lakers buddy, my buddy Luca, sometimes he gets frustrated at the Lakers, but I was like, it takes time, man. This is a good, talented team. You have one of the best players in the world that we've seen in the last 10, 15, 20 years. Not named Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant or Shaq or not, right?
Oh, absolutely.
LeBron's no slouch, right? So you put him in that lineup when they're healthy. They get into that playoffs healthy. To me, that's the number one thing. Get healthy, get chemistry. And to me, they are the best team in the West.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know we'll have more time for the other team in California. In San Francisco.
I already mentioned them. They're second-ranked team, right? So
who?
The other team in LA.
No. I said the other team. No, first of all, I don't acknowledge that. I was talking about the Golden State Warriors,
Oh,
right? But we'll give the people a little bit of a teaser because we need to talk about, Steph Curry, the return of Clay, right? Draymond Green's playing well. Your boy there,
Andrew Wiggins.
your boy Wiggins, dunking on people and putting them in body bags. Did you see that, by the way, the other day?
Yeah, I did. I don't think I would have missed that.
Jeez, that was dirty. But
yeah,
we're gonna have to save that for our next podcast. How about that? That's a teaser.
Exactly, that's a teaser, and it's like, oh man, it's like I'm watching Andrew Wiggins from high school, right? That's what I seem like I'm watching a little bit more athleticism.
I'm still not so.
To me, more athleticism. That's what I'm seeing from him. But
it's nice. It's cute.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Basketball Lab podcast.